United States. But that's a court's decision, not the federal government. Last week, we told you how the Biden administration had extended the mask mandate for people traveling on planes, trains, and other forms of public transit. The rule had been set to expire on April 19th. The Centers for Disease Control extended the requirement until at least May 3rd. But this week, a federal judge struck down the rule, saying it was unlawful because it went beyond the CDC's authority and didn't follow the usual steps for new government requirements. So does this mean the mandate is done, gone, finito for public transportation? We don't know yet. The Biden administration will still appeal the court's decision, which it called disappointing. It says the Justice Department will be reviewing it and deciding what to do next. Meantime, the White House and the CDC say they still recommend wearing masks on public transportation, but several airlines, some of which strongly criticized the government's mask requirements, were quick to tell travelers that masks were no longer needed on flights. When some passengers heard this, they said they'd still keep their masks on, while others who were aboard flights at the time cheered. Some other transportation companies like Uber, Lyft, and Amtrak have also dropped their mask requirements, but they say passengers and operators can still choose to wear them. Opponents of the ruling have said it obstructs the government's efforts to respond to the COVID pandemic and protect people who need it most. Supporters have said it's a win for freedom and for people on public transportation who've been miserable while wearing masks.
A surprise court ruling has ended the transportation mask mandate for now. U.S. District Judge Catherine Kimball Mizelle said she does not need another hearing to decide that the rule exceeds the CDC's authority. Mizelle's Monday ruling first threw the travel industry into disarray. But now a growing list of airlines confirm masks are no longer required on their flights. The federal government began requiring masks on planes, trains, buses, boats, and in terminals starting in February 2021. Last week, the Biden administration once again extended the rule to expire on May 3rd, citing a rise in coronavirus cases. But only hours prior, the airline industry's top lobby wrote the White House to say the mandate must end.
We've done it for 2 years, and it's time to move beyond that and now make that the responsibility of individuals.
Judge Mizelle was appointed to federal district court in 2020 by then President Donald Trump. In her ruling, Mizelle said travelers have been, quote, forcibly removed from their airplane seats, denied boarding at the bus steps, and turned away at the train station doors, likening it to, quote, detention and quarantine. Immediately following her decision, passengers at airports across the country continued wearing masks, unaware of the ruling.
Hopefully it ends.
I will always wear my mask. I lost my grandmother to COVID a year ago, and so I'm very particular about the mask.
Up next, it's been almost 2 months since Russian military forces invaded neighboring Ukraine, and the battlefield is changing. For one thing, Russia's been unable to capture the Ukrainian capital in the north. U.S. officials say that's because of apparent tactical mistakes by Russian forces and fierce resistance by Ukrainian fighters. So now, Russia's concentrating its fight on eastern Ukraine in what a Ukrainian official calls the second phase of the war. With the change in tactics comes a new weapons shipment from the United States, this one worth $800 million. We've reported on numerous American contributions like this. The U.S. has sent billions to support Ukraine, even though it's not part of the NATO alliance that America is a key member of. How is Russia responding to these shipments?
The first shipments of that new, more heavy-duty military assistance for Ukraine started arriving in the region over the weekend, but there is already concern that more equipment may be needed soon. A U.S. official said there is growing concerns about the ammunition inventory of the Ukrainians, as it's expected that heavy ground combat will be picking up in the coming days in eastern Ukraine. Now, this new round of $800 million worth of security assistance includes 18 howitzers and 40,000 artillery rounds. But a source says that those could be extended and used in just a matter of days. Now, the Pentagon has been working, trying to address how to arm the Ukrainians faster. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, as well as Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, have held daily calls with their counterparts in the region, urging them to ship more supplies and equipment into Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told our colleague Jake Tapper that he's appreciative of this new military assistance, but says that much more is needed and will be needed in the coming weeks. Now, at the same time, Russia has been protesting the U.S. sending this type of equipment into Ukraine, sending a diplomatic note to the State Department warning of, quote, unpredictable consequences if they keep arming the Ukrainians. But for the time being, the U.S. does not appear to be deterred in any way from providing this type of weaponry to Ukraine, and they're adapting the kinds of weapons that they are sending more sophisticated and heavy-duty equipment and weaponry into Ukraine, even after some administration officials had earlier been hesitant to do so, worried that it could pose a greater risk of escalation. But it's clear that the U.S. is listening to the demands of the Ukrainians and trying to fulfill their needs as quickly as possible, acknowledging that more may be on the way as well. Arlette Saenz, CNN, the White House.
10-second trivia. What is the most common type of twins? Identical twins, mirror image twins, fraternal twins, or monozygotic twins? Monozygotic is just another way of saying identical, but the most common type of twins is fraternal.
And you were right.
But this next story is 3 times the fun. It involves triplets. The chances of a woman being pregnant with 3 babies at once are 1 in 10,000. If they happen to be identical, like the Wisconsin trio you're about to meet, they can be tough even for parents to tell apart, especially when they're infants. So besides different outfits, what can be done about this?
Give the baby
When you're
number
dealing
one
with
tattoo
identical
on his forehead.
triplets, you can't expect
Number
them to
two on the
always
other.
be introducing
Number three on the other.
themselves. So is it any wonder that this tip for triplets went viral on TikTok? Forget pedicures. This is a cure for misidentification. The boy's proud aunt posted the nail polish hack.
Who gets what color of the triplets? How's that work?
So Henrik is blue, James is green, and Thomas is red.
The 15-month-old Hasselquist triplets were more of a hassle to tell apart when they were younger.
First few months, having that there as a backup just to make sure
I would
you
commit
didn't keep the
identity
same
fraud.
kids
If I
Posters
was
on TikTok called the nail
twin
polish
or
trick
triplet.
genius. It brought back memories. I did this with my twins and it wore off in the bath. I spent days convinced they were mixed up. I'm still unsure and they are 21. Okay, even nail polish wouldn't solve problems on the magnitude seen in The Parent Trap.
Then you and I are like sisters. Hi, we're like twins.
But the parents of these Wisconsin triplets aren't taking any chances. In addition to weekly nail polish application, they tend to dress the boys in their color.
These kids truly are color coded.
yes.
And we're not color-coded, they're numbered.
Unexpected item in bagging area.
These triplets have swept the internet off its feet with their painted toes. Ginny Moose, CNN, New York.
Is it genius? It's genius. An interesting way to polish up on parenting. Of course, when they're older, it could land you in deep triple. It might leave one blue, another red in the face, the third green with envy. But if you're a fan of color-coded kids, baby, mom totally killed. Today's shout-out goes out to Plainfield East High School. It is located in Plainfield, Illinois. The one and only way to get a shout-out is to subscribe and to leave a comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Carl Lazeus.
Awesome stuff. Great job, Carl. Rocked it yet again. Don't you think so, Liz? Alright, so we're gonna keep talking about China and imperialism today. Here's stuff. We're gonna start, when we get to it, on this page. Okay, so like page 4. But first, okay, we're gonna do a little thing to review some concepts that you will most assuredly see come Regents time. Okay? My guess is you will have questions like this, both on the Regents and on exams in here, and quizzes and tests, and just I'm generally gonna want you to know these things. Okay? So, gave you a separate handout, and you'll notice it looks like the next page in your packet, but we're just gonna go over this today. So we're gonna talk about author, audience, purpose, point of view, and reliability, okay? Which are things that we've kind of touched on here before, okay? But we're gonna use these things to determine what's important, why are we asking these questions, especially when we examine historical documents, specifically primary sources. So what's a primary source?
Somebody that was there when it occurred.
Right, the source comes from something that happened in that time period, right? Secondary source is like a historian writing about the time period, but like after it happened. Okay, so what's a good example of a primary source?
A
journal.
A journal, yeah. You got
One
one?
from Auschwitz.
What about that?
They would know a lot about Auschwitz.
Okay, so like a first person account.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So,
Like that one lady that died a few years ago that was like the oldest living
right,
person from Auschwitz.
okay, yeah, so her personal account during the time period.
He
Okay?
did?
Yeah, she died.
So, when we examine these things, specifically documents,
There's like 100
diary
points.
entries, newspapers are another good one. Okay, we have to look at generally these 5 things: author, audience, purpose, point of view, and reliability. So, what's the author?
That muffin was really good.
I'm glad. Kylie, what's an author?
A person who wrote the thing.
Yeah, the person who wrote writing, right? Why is that important when we're looking at historical documents? Take your time.
Because if the author is someone that was there during the time, it's more reliable than someone who read an article about it and then wrote a book.
Sure, and let me ask, when we look at the next ones, audience, purpose, point of view, reliability, how important is the author to determining these other things? Can we determine someone's point of view if we don't know who wrote it? No,
No?
right? So we have to, first thing we have to do is identify the author. Who were they? How do they fit into the context? Okay, so I'm just gonna put some notes, right? So, person who creates the source.
Do we have to write this down too?
Oh yeah. Or document, whatever you want with, right?
Yeah.
And then why is it important? Because helps us identify key factors about the source. Okay? Good. Okay, Cameron. What's an audience?
Bunch of people
Bunch of people, what are they doing?
sitting,
Okay, they're sitting, doing what?
watching something.
Okay, so they're watching something. Let me ask, are you an audience right now?
No.
You're not?
Yes.
Yeah. Cameron knows the answer, he's just being funny. No. Yeah, so you guys would be an audience, right? Now, when we're talking about historical documents, do you think somebody during the time period wrote a newspaper and then stood up in front of a crowd and read the newspaper out loud to them?
Yeah, possibly.
But probably not, right? Do you think it happened very frequently?
Probably not.
Right, okay. So the audience isn't always just like a group of people sitting in a crowd, right? It's also really the group of people who
Experience it.
who takes in the information, right? How is audience important to understand historical documents? Why is it important?
To spread awareness.
Okay, so you're right, right?
Am I really?
Yeah, I mean, we need the audience to spread awareness about an issue. That's a really good example. What about those questions that are right under, right? Who is the intended audience? What do you know about the audience? Why are these important questions to ask? let me put it this way, because we've studied Marx in here, right? Do you think Karl Marx, who wrote the Communist Manifesto, was writing that for the benefit of factory owners? Or was he writing it for factory workers?
Workers.
Workers. Why does that change what he writes? How does that audience change things?
Hey, when are we gonna go to that assembly thing?
I don't know.
Presentation?
I have no idea, but
I wanna know.
why don't you tell me,
That's for
how
anybody
does an
not-
audience change the writing?
Because if he was writing to the owners, he would probably write more in their favor.
Okay, so you have a different message, right? Okay, so yeah, the audience is group of people.
The message is intended for.
There it is. That's like a perfect dictionary definition here.
I don't know, pretty smart.
Yeah, you're wicked smart. Wicked smart. Okay, and it's important for us to identify it because it helps us understand the messaging or the message, right? Why was it written like this? Why was it maybe like Marx wrote a pamphlet, right? Okay, how much easier is it for factory workers to get a hold of a pamphlet than to say attend an assembly?
Much easier.
Right, much easier, okay? So the audience impacts not only the content, but the way in which we give the information out. Okay, next one, purpose, right? This is really, like, probably the most important one, right?
Not
What's-
to be
Reason
mistaken.
for the
purpose.
message.
Yeah, what's the purpose? What's the reason? Why is this important for us? First of all, so what is the purpose, right? Can you put like a definition on it? What's the purpose? Go on dictionary, girl.
The purpose?
Yeah, what's the purpose? Just what's the purpose? It's
Why they do what they do.
yeah, why they do what they do, right? Excuse you.
Not really like.
So, yeah, purpose is pretty simple, right? Why
Didn't I tell you
someone
before
does
I don't
what they
care about
do.
your opinion?
Why,
Alright, and
Kylie, why is it important to understand purpose when we're analyzing historical documents?
freedoms.
What?
Why is it important to figure out the purpose?
Because it's like watching a movie that has no plot.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kylie. I appreciate it. Okay, so, the purpose is the reason for creating the source. And it helps us define the objective, right? It helps us figure out why the person wrote what they wrote, how they wrote it, when they wrote it, where they wrote it, right? What are the goals? A lot of times, like when we analyze like labor reform movements, okay, like the women's suffrage movement, right? It's important to understand what's their purpose, what's their goal, right? It's to get women the right to vote, right? Okay, everybody good so far?
Now I need to. I had to finish, audience.
Good?
Not yet,
Where you at?
like halfway through, at help.
Helps us define, oh, you're on the audience still, huh? You gotta keep up, dude. You got stuff to do today. Alright, Liz, you ready? While Liam's writing, I'm gonna ask you the next
There,
question.
I'm done.
What's point of view?
I know what it is, I just don't know how to explain it.
Well,
The
do your
perspective,
best.
like first person, third person or
The
something.
perspective in which Carrie. Hey, what about my packet?
Wow, you guys did a great job, and Mr. Paggio will be proud of your ELA skills.
Mr.
So what do you
Paggio's
think
always
that
proud of me.
point of
Stop
view
lying
is?
to them.
I'm not talking to you too.
Stop lying to us.
What do you think, Liz?
Nothing is the.
Oh, yeah, you gotta answer it. You can answer this one or the next one.
Neither.
Which one? You wanna answer what it is, or why it's important? What do you think it is? Why, like, what's my point of view?
Carrie's in a silly goofy mood.
Why would I have a point of view? Why would you say? If I were like, teachers are amazing, why would I have that point of view?
You guys should say
What do you think?
eat our
So what is that? What is, if I say teachers are amazing?
Because I know that.
Alright, hey, Carrie, come back and sit in your seat.
The
Thank you.
shortest distance would
Say that
play 2
again?
points and not add them.
An opinion, right? Yeah, that's exactly it, okay? So their point of view is basically their opinion on the matter, okay?
Mr. Curran.
Author's opinion on the topic.
That doesn't even add up.
What, their point of view, right? Why is it important to identify that? Why is it important?
Because if you're looking for an article that is like trying to tell you one thing, but the author's point of view is the exact opposite point, I'm reading it.
Yeah.
Okay. It also can explain their biases. You know what a bias is? What is it?
Which side of an argument to choose.
Right, but the bias is which side of an argument you choose based on what position you are. Right, so if I say teachers are awesome, I have a bias because I'm a teacher, right? Of course I think teachers are awesome, I am one, right? Like, Liz is probably gonna be like, students are awesome, because she is a student, right? Okay, so your point of view matters.
I don't think Liz would say that. I think Liz would say that students are terrible because she's around a bunch of them.
Well, see,
They're
but
terrible.
that's another bias that she has, then, right?
Most of the students
Maybe
are
if she was at home all day on Zoom, she would be like, hey, students are cool, because she doesn't have to be around them, right? So that's a different thing. So, but that's why it's important to identify point of view, okay? So, it's important because it helps us identify bias. And then the last one, reliability. Is this document reliable or unreliable? Okay, this one kind of explains itself. Why is it important?
Because the document isn't reliable,
Then what's the point?
Right.
Yeah, right? So it helps us understand how accurate the information is. Let me ask you a question. Is it possible for a document to be both reliable and reliable at the same time? Reliable and unreliable?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, I'd agree. Right? Because, again, a lot of that goes back to, like, point of view. Okay? If we're trying to prove an argument, okay, a document might be very reliable, but if it takes the other side of that argument, is it going to be reliable for our purposes?
Hey,
Probably not, right?
you forgot to write is.
I was thinking the same thing.
How accurate the information
Is.
is. Nice. I'm glad you're up on things like that. Alright, we got all that? Good to go?
I don't need a second point for reliable.
No, it's it
What sources,
explains itself.
what other sources would be helpful to?
So that's when we're gonna do the document, we can answer that question. Okay? So, if you take out your packets and go to the Qing's,
No.
the Qing Emperor's response to Lord Macartney's mission.
Is that this one that you gave us the other time?
No, it's the regular one. It's the colorful one.
Jesus, Carrie.
There you go. You got it. It's the one I gave Patty like 30 seconds ago. Yes.
Get into it. Ow!
Yes.
No.
Okay. You gonna survive?
No.
Here you go. Alright, follow along, I'm gonna read, okay?
No.
You wanna read?
No.
Oh, okay, no. Okay,
No.
the Qinglong Emperor's letter to George III in 1793.
Shut up, Leo.
Okay?
We're on my-
Remember my rule, if you're talking while I read, then you have to take over. So,
Tell me to stop mumbling. Mumbling counts too.
yeah, Gary.
Where the heck are we?
Oh.
We are.
Okay. So, our dynasty's majestic virtue has penetrated unto every country under heaven, and kings of all nations have offered their costly tribute by land and sea. As your ambassador can see for himself, we possess all things. I set no value on objects strange or ingenious, and have no use for your country's manufactures. This, then, is my answer to your request to appoint a representative at my court, a request contrary to our dynastic usage, which would only result in inconvenience to yourself. I have expounded my wishes in detail, and have commanded your tribute envoys to leave in peace on their homeward journey. It behooves you, O king, to respect my sentiments and to display even greater devotion and loyalty in future, so that, by perpetual submission to our throne, you may secure peace and prosperity for your country hereafter. Yesterday, your ambassador petitioned my ministers to memorialize me regarding your trade with China, but his proposal is not consistent with our dynastic usage and cannot be entertained. As the tea, silk, and porcelain which the Celestial Empire produces are absolute necessities to European nations and to yourselves, we have permitted as a signal mark of favor that foreign homes should be established at Canton, so that your wants might be supplied and your country thus participate in our beneficence. Your request for a small island near Chusan where your merchants may reside and goods be warehoused arises from your desire to develop trade. As there are neither foreign homes nor interpreters in or near Chusan, where none of your ships have ever called, such an island would be utterly useless for your purposes. Consider, moreover, that England is not the only barbarian land which wishes to establish trade with our empire. Supposing that other nations were all to imitate your evil example and beseech me to present them each and all with a site for trading purposes, how could I possibly comply? This is also a flagrant infringement of the usage of my empire and cannot possibly be entertained. Okay, so pretty strong words. So first one, who's the author?
This guy, the emperor.
There you go, Chinese emperor, right? So the Qinglong Emperor of China. Who is his?
Hey, where do we write this at?
At the next page.
Oh, we're
So
not.
I gave you like a
here?
duplicate. No, there's another. I mean, you can write it wherever you want. I'll grade you with that. So who's the audience?
Yeah, it is.
The king and
The audience?
Is-
No, it's not. It's George III.
Hello? Hi. I do. Okay, sounds good. Yep. Bye. Kylie, Miss Miles is available if you want to head up.
No.
Or you can wait till the end of my class. Because I know how much you love it. So who's the audience?
George III.
I don't want to go.
Good, King George III of England, right?
I'm not walking out there no more.
Okay. What is the purpose for the emperor writing this letter to the king? What's he telling him?
That there are other places to trade with.
So is that what he's saying?
So
You're talking about
actually, could I
manufacturers?
go up there, please, and thank you?
Yeah, go ahead.
They're
Because
talking
I
about-
wanna have gym class. Carrie, you better come to gym.
So they're talking about establishing trade, but what is the emperor saying? Is he being like, yeah man, we're gonna open up a bunch of ports for you? Or is he basically being like, hey man, you can get lost?
he's telling them to get lost.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Because why?
It says
Because they're
consider
barbarians that want land.
There you go, right? He's telling them to get lost because they're barbarians, okay? His trade proposal, King George III, is insulting to the emperor, okay?
Why
So
are you
he's writing
recording?
this source,
Why is your phone recording?
because I'm being observed. Yeah. I said that yesterday, don't worry about it. We can discuss it later if you want.
You're really recording?
Yeah.
Or are you really, how are you being observed?
For
Who's observing you?
people. Don't worry about it.
They're not even in here though.
I know, that's the point. Okay, so what's the purpose? Writing the letter.
Ms. Miles is in the office, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, bye.
To reject his trade proposal. Okay? Yeah? Yes? Yes, sir. Okay, what is the emperor's point of view? Basically, what is...
First person.
Okay, that's a good one. So he's first person, right? What else? What is his... What is his bias? What is he in favor of? What is his priority?
That he does not want to trade
Right, because whose interest does he have at heart?
his own,
He's looking out for his own and, by extension,
the people.
all of China, right? Yeah. So he is defending the interests of China. And then last one, is this a reliable source?
Yeah,
Yeah, why? Because who wrote it?
the emperor. Or at least one of the people, like, under
It's
him.
a first-hand document.
It's a primary source written by I want to say major player, but that's pretty much what it is, right? He's a major player in this whole thing. Okay, but I'm going to say written by an emperor. Okay, it's an official correspondence. Okay. Now we're going to do something a little unique today. I'm going to hand you a piece of paper, and I'll throw the curves back up for you. Okay, Lynn? Now, because I want to know, I'm interested to know, this is a fact-finding mission for Mr. Kerman. Okay? I'm going to give you a piece of paper. I want you to write down, and it doesn't just have to be about China, it can be imperialism as a whole, right? So India, the Sepoy Rebellion, okay? I want you to write one thing that you found interesting, one thing that you didn't find interesting, or, what? Yeah, you can look through your notes, get a reminder, right? So one thing you found interesting, one thing that you didn't find interesting, where you're like, Mr. Kern, why are you teaching this? And Cameron, no, you cannot write down everything, okay? And then the third thing, if you could if we could do a deep dive on YouTube, right? Just like next video, what's a topic that you wish you could learn more about? Like if we were just gonna be like, let's click on every video that has to do with the Qing Emperor, let's do it. Okay? So take a minute, think. Again, beautiful part about this, Liz, is that there's no wrong answers. Okay? Something that interests.
Was that test that we just did on imperialism?
No, it wasn't. We don't have much. We only have like vocab, India, and then the beginning stages of it.
So what were we supposed to start with this again?
So,
I was,
one thing you found interesting, one thing you didn't find interesting, or that you already knew, right? So you're like, Mr. Kern, I know that's why you teach me. And then the last thing is one thing you wish you could learn more about. Like I said, if we were gonna do a deep dive on YouTube, which topic would you deep dive? Okay? Yeah. So that way, if Cameron just goes everything, I'll know it's him and I can get him in trouble. Or tomorrow when you come down, I can pin you down and make sure you write a good answer. And there's purpose for you.
thanks.
You're welcome.
I don't like anything.
let me guess, your least interesting answer is all of China. I don't like.
So one thing we found interesting, one thing we didn't find interesting, and something we wanna learn more about.
Yeah. Yep.
Alright.
Or like I said, I think the best way to put the third one is like if you were on YouTube and you saw a video about this topic and you clicked on it, which one would you be most likely to click on and then just go through the rabbit hole? Just like next video, 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 next video.
I feel like we've only learned one topic.
About what?
Like we've only
Imperialism.
learned about,
We learned about India a little bit, and then China. Remember the lesson Mr. Herman did? Anything from there that you found interesting, or not interesting, or both? Or mildly interesting?
this section though. You're confusing my brain, don't like it.
I know. I do that a lot.
The only topic I even like that we've learned about is the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.